So, to repeat a few things, we need to understand gene expression. Remember that we want to compare DNA to being a complete genetic cookbook symbolized by 2N. What we find making up DNA are chromosomes, 46 of them. That would be equivalent to the 46 pages you would find in that complete cookbook. Written on the chromosomes are genes, which would be equivalent to recipes, and we can use those genes to make proteins, which in terms of a cookbook, we can use recipes to make meals. And the key thing that I want to stress is that, again, we get 23 chromosomes from dad, 23 from mom, and each one has to line up. So, for example, the first page of both their cookbooks should be their version of how to make, say, the cardiovascular system. Dad should give his copy, mom should give hers. The second page of both should be how to make the digestive system. Dad gives his copy, mom gives hers. And then the very last page, the 23rd page of both their cookbooks, should determine gender. The only recipe mom could give is how to make a girl, but dad, he can either give a recipe to make a boy or a girl. The next thing you want to do is identify certain traits or disorders by the group they fall into. These are all the disorders that are sex-linked, meaning that they're on the X chromosome. So let's tackle the questions that would be about sex-linked disorders. First, we want to identify who's male, who's female, and create our Punnett square. So let's say we have mom and dad. They have a daughter named Deborah, and she's a carrier for some sex-linked disorder that no one else expresses. Well, since she's their daughter, she's one of these girls here, XX, right? But we don't know who gave her the defective gene because no one else expresses it. Now, since no one else expresses this disorder, this means that dad doesn't have it, because men are either expressing a sex-linked disorder or they don't have it. But clearly, Deborah had to get it from somewhere. That only leaves mom. So we put this negative symbol to show that mom must also be a carrier, and she passed it on to her daughter, Deborah. That now makes Deborah a carrier. She doesn't express it, but she carries the gene for it. And again, because women have two X's, a genetic backup, it's like having two cell phones. Deborah's first cell phone broke, but she has a backup for it. Another rule about sex-linked is that boys only get their disorders from their mother. So, probability is that one of their sons in the future might have it, and it will only come from the mother. If I give another scenario where another daughter fully expresses that disorder, that means it came from both mom and dad. So maybe dad passed on his bad X, since he has it, he therefore would have passed it on to his daughters. But the rule about the sex-linked disorders is that they're on the X chromosome, and we could trace them backwards based on whether somebody's a carrier or fully expresses it. The next set of disorders are autosomal recessive, meaning that these traits you have to get from both parents, a copy of both recipes from both parents for it to be expressed. If you only get one copy, it will not be expressed. So here, we want to understand autosomal recessive. These are traits that you need to get from both parents. We want to identify the normal trait and the abnormal trait. Now again, here we just want to do the Punnett square, and we see two parents. Both are carriers for the disorder, meaning that they carry it genetically, but they don't express it. Again, this goes back to having two cell phones. One of their cell phones is broken, but one of them works just fine. Here's the probability of the children that they will have, and we can see that there's a 25% chance that any kid they have will have this disorder, albinism. When we go to this Punnett square, it's meant to show how we can backtrack certain traits if they're recessive. So here's a child that has albinism. Where'd he get it from? Well, again, to express a recessive disorder, you have to get it from both parents. So this trait came from one parent. This other trait came from the other parent. This means that the parents are carriers. They may not have even known it. Here is a list of traits that are autosomal dominant, meaning that you only need to get a copy from one parent for it to be expressed. Remember, don't confuse the autosomal traits with the sex-linked traits. Autosomal has nothing to do with the sex of the parent for how it's passed down. Sex-linked does. This example of autosomal dominance, how do we tackle that? Again, we do our Punnett square. We identify the trait that's dominant and the trait that's recessive. We have one example where one parent is heterozygous black hair, another parent homozygous blonde hair. The probability of their children, 50% of the time, they'll come out heterozygous black hair or homozygous blonde hair. In example 2, we have a parent that's homozygous black hair and another homozygous blonde hair. But whatever kids they have, they will always come out heterozygous black hair. If any of the children come out blonde, we know that a paternity test has to be done.